Welcome to OOD Works, the podcast, a show about unique individuals and the services provided by Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, the state agency that helps individuals with disabilities find a job and be more independent. Here's your host, Kim Jump.
On this episode of OOD Works, I am joined by Katie Frederick, Program Administrator for the Bureau of Services for the Visually Impaired here at OOD. We talk about self-advocacy, assistive technology, and Voicecorps Reading Services.
I am a person who is totally blind, just as some context for my story. And so I grew up in Northwest Ohio, went to a public school for all of my education, and after high school went to college at Wright State University in Dayton. And after college, I moved to Columbus, started my first job in 2008. I was working for a federal government agency at that time. And after that job, I worked for a nonprofit called the American Council of the Blind of Ohio, which is a consumer advocacy organization. Then from there, I worked at The Ohio State University, where I worked on helping ensure that applications and websites are digitally accessible. So making sure that people with disabilities can access digital content. And then one day out of the blue, I received a call from the woman who is now my boss, Sarah Kelly, asking if I wanted to come work for her. So that is the long, short version of how I came to OOD in the fall of 2018.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So had you met Sarah previously?
Yes. So she and I met a few years ago. We both attended a great leadership conference that's hosted by the American Foundation for the Blind each year in Washington, D.C. And I'd seen and connected with Sarah at different community outreach events in the past. And so I was, very familiar with her and the work that OOD was doing. And especially as my role of the executive director of the American Council of the Blind of Ohio, we had a lot of meetings at OOD, and, we were active and engaged with what was going on at the organization here. So yes, I knew Sarah, and she and I, had we seemed to connect really well, and she was, I was a person that she thought of when she had an opening on her team.
Yeah. So you work with Sarah for the Bureau of Services for the Visually Impaired.
Yes.
And what is your unique role within the Bureau?
So my job title is Program Administrator, which basically means jack of all trades. Sometimes it seems that way. So within my role here at OOD, within our BSVI section, is that I help support our counselors and our staff in the field. So if they have a question about working with people who are blind or visually impaired, I can assist with that. Or if they need to talk through a specific issue, we can talk about that. I also help with some of our outreach initiatives. So looking at, how can we continue to spread the word about our organization and the services that we provide to individuals who may want those services. And I also help with some of the accessibility initiatives around the agency. So helping to, because of my experience at The Ohio State University, helping to make sure that documents and websites and things that we put our name on here are accessible to as many people as possible, ultimately to everyone.
And you are such a great resource. I know I appreciate having you be that person that I can go to with questions or that can help check things. I know I've brought to you things even from sister agencies and others that you've been really helpful in giving that perspective.
And it's great. I love doing that because A, it helps me keep my skills sharpened and up to date. And B, but it also, more importantly though, it also helps, if I can share with you that, okay, this document has some issues, here's what they are, you can then take that back and share it with your contacts, and then they can hopefully, learn from that and make better documents too. So it really, communication really is a two-way street, and I'm happy to share my lane of that.
If there is someone who happens to be listening that maybe has a question that they would like to send your way, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they can, send me an email or give me a phone call. Okay, so my email address is Catherine. That's my official legal name. KATHRYN .Frederick FREDERICK at OOD.ohio.gov. And my telephone number here is 614-438-1260.
Thank you for that. When we first talked about launching a podcast and sharing and brainstorming different topics, one idea that you shared with me that I know you have some passion around is self-advocacy. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's such an important topic for individuals with disabilities, for young people, for all kinds of diverse individuals. Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, how do you define self-advocacy?
How do I define self-advocacy? So that is a great question. I think for me, self-advocacy is knowing and understanding what I need to accomplish a task and being able to explain and share with others what my needs are. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if I'm going to a meeting, I might email you, Kim, and say, hey, could you, if there are going to be any handouts at the meeting, could you provide those electronically beforehand, please? Or if they're not ready, I would love to have them immediately after the meeting. And really, when we're talking about accessibility and some best practices, if you're having a handout at the meeting, it's always good to just follow up with an email copy after, mm-hmm. just so that people, maybe they forgot to take it with them, or they were trying to take notes during the meeting and they might have missed something on the screen or the handout, whatever. So that's just a good practice. But just being able to know what you need as a person who might have some unique needs, and to be able to explain those in a professional and but yet direct manner to mm-hmm. to say, this is what I need to be successful so that we can both reach this goal, or so that I can complete this task. And sometimes your first accommodation is just good to know how to explain what your needs are. Mm-hmm. So that's always a good first step, is understanding what you need as a person to be successful.
And so sometimes that really takes a step back, like to think through that.
Exactly.
Like that self-responsibility of mm-hmm. thinking through, okay, in this scenario, what's going to be helpful to me in my workplace? What would improve this situation?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I had to do in high school, and I hated it at the time because I was so shy, and I was I was so nervous about, I have to call and order my textbooks. And this was, I had to get them on tape and stuff. And this was, oh my gosh, I have to talk to someone on the phone. Oh, I don't want to do that. But, that was my teacher teaching me, you have to ask for your books if you need them on tape. Or mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that for you. You're in high school now. You need to, when you're in college, Disability Services isn't going to come knocking on your door saying, what do you need? Right? They're going to say, we're here. If you need us, come and chat and we'll provide services for you. But you have to be the one to say, this is what I need. So I was, advocating for myself in high school, if not before. I mean, I had, again, going to a public school. My parents had to do some advocating for me. Mm-hmm. And I learned from that, if I don't speak up, nobody knows and nothing may happen. So if I want or need something, I need to kind of be the one to say, hey, this would help me, or this would, this is going to help me meet this goal.
when you say you went to a public school, you didn't go to the Ohio State School for the Blind.
Correct.
Or a school that you were mainstream.
Yes.
And so I'm sure you did have plenty of opportunities to practice this skill and your parents to role model it.
Yes.
Because the school wasn't necessarily designed to meet all of your needs.
They weren't, but I will say to kind of back up, the Ohio State School for the Blind is a great education facility for students who need that kind of one-on-one and some other, individualized training. So it's a great place to go. At the time when it was time for me to start school, my parents took a tour of OSSB and just, they didn't want to send their 5-year-old daughter an hour and a half from home.
Right.
And they wanted me to grow up in the community and they wanted me to be part of the family. And so yes, again, we had some challenges, but overall my public school was great. I mean, it was a small school, so I think in some ways that's helpful too. But yes, I mean, we still had to, again, to speak up in a good way, but I did, get to see that and have some time in high school, like I said, to practice that too, which was good, so that when I went to college, I could be ready and tackle those issues. So.
Kind of how did that idea of self-advocacy, how did that look during your college years?
Wright State was a great college experience for me. And yes, their campus is very accessible and things, and they have a great program. But I mean, again, there were times I had to, go in and say, hey, where's my textbook? Like, is it ready? Or, are you backed up because of the semester starting or, quarter, whatever. So I had to be on top of, okay, what books do I have? What books do I still need? If I don't have the book in an alternative format, how can I problem solve that myself? How do I work with classmates or friends or whatever to get the text that I need? So it was definitely a skill that, and for me, alternative textbooks was the one thing I really needed the most, or, extended test time. I would have to go the first day of the quarter and schedule all of my tests and things, which was...
yeah, I heard that sigh.
Yes. Standing in line, waiting to do that and just,
Fun
times. Just doing all of that. But it was something that I knew I needed to do. And I could not have, I know I need that extra time in that service. So I need to do what I need to do to make that happen. My first job that I spoke about was when I moved to Columbus in 2008. I worked for the federal government for an agency under the Department of Defense called the Defense Finance and Accounting Service. And it was I had a great experience there. I worked with a lot of great people, but the first job that they had me doing was working with paper vouchers. So these receipts, invoices would come in on paper, and I would have to try to use my scanner and like optical character recognition to figure them out. And so they would have like writing on them sometimes. And it was just really, really a struggle for me as someone who couldn't see the original paper to, to try to like read that back, because optical character recognition, so OCR, it basically takes a picture of the paper and then tries to convert that to text, but it will mess up things like the letter I will think as a 1 or, different idiosyncrasies like that. And so I had some challenges with that. And so I had to, kind of work up the courage to go to my boss. And that was really hard because, again, I knew I needed to advocate, but it was my first job. I was out of college and I'm like, what do you mean? Not every, we also had some other systems that we had to work with, and I had to figure out how to use my screen reader with those. It was an awakening because it's not, people don't use Microsoft Word for everything, in the job setting. And so just, being able to adapt to that, and also to have the confidence to really sit down and have that conversation and say, hey, I've heard there are some systems here that use more electronic based paperwork. Could I get into one of those systems? Because I think me trying to work with this printed paper stuff, this paper material is not going so well for all of us, because, they were saying, well, your numbers are down and you're not producing as well as everyone else. And I said, yes, but here's what I have to go through to make that happen. And how can we find a solution that gets me to produce and participate at the same level that everyone else is doing. That's also, fair and reasonable. So
it's not that you were looking for an out.
Exactly.
You were just looking for a solution.
Right. And so, just having that conversation and explaining to them of, yes, I can spend extra time doing this, but at the end of the day, I still can't read some of this material. So I'm still going to miss things or not be able to do the full job duties, even with, an accommodation.
Right.
And I think, looking back to, I think of, now how I would have handled that differently. Maybe I would have proposed more solutions than just let's find a different job, but as a person with a disability, I think, problem solving is just something I do. It's built in by default, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like that. Yeah.
Just having
it's your default setting, Katie.
Yeah. Right. What if the bus is late, or, what if, what if you miss the bus? What, how are you going to, just that ability to problem solve? Okay, I'll, get the next one. Or, if it's really bad weather, I need to call maybe and get paratransit or Lyft or something. And so, just thinking through all of those situations.
Yeah. You spoke about confidence. How important is confidence when it comes to self-advocacy?
So I think it is important. I think it's important to just, trust yourself. And, again, it's easier said than done. If I sat here and said I had, great confidence all the time or great self-esteem, I'd be, that's just not true. But I mean, I think, if you want to advocate for yourself and you need to advocate for yourself, you need to be confident in what you're saying and what you're doing. Right. And so you need to, even if you're feeling nervous or a little bit shy, trying to sit down and talk to maybe a boss or someone about something, can be challenging. But I think, the more you go in with showing your confidence, the more that will show through in your ask or your request. So, if you're nervous, maybe practice with a friend or a family member and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about, how would I handle this situation? That's what I did a lot with my teachers in high school or my parents, how would I problem solve this? Or, my parents would ask me questions. What would you do if, so just to get me thinking about, not to scare me, but just to have in my mind those kind of situations where you might need to kind of step back and think about, okay, what's the problem and what could a possible solution be? So, I think it's important to have as much confidence as you can. And I can tell you, the more you advocate for yourself, the easier it will become. So I take Lyft and Uber to work because I live pretty close by and it works for me. But, every time a Lyft car pulls up, I wonder, am I going to have to advocate to sit in their car with my service animal? And, unfortunately, it's really becoming an issue with the prevalence of some people. There are some people out there who are trying to say they have service animals when they don't. And so that's becoming a thing that a lot of people in the disability community are dealing with, as well as it's the Department of Transportation released a rulemaking about it for airlines and things like that. So it's a really hot topic right now. So for me, every time I get in that car, I have to be prepared to say, no, you do need to take me with my service animal. If you don't, I will report you to Lyft and there will be consequences for you. And, I never want to do that, right? I never want to, especially at 7 a.m. in the morning, I just want to go to work.
Right.
But, again, it's one of those things where, I and others with disabilities or who travel with a service animal kind of have to be, and again, not necessarily defensive, but just stating that, no, it is policy. And, if you're going to work for this company, you need to abide by its policies and the rules. And so, it can be a challenge sometimes. I've had drivers who have, shown up and, well, I've been waiting for the ride. It says your ride is here. And then, oh, your ride's canceled. It's like, yeah, I didn't see the car, but they probably saw me with the dog and off they drove. And it's sad, but, every time I schedule a ride, I take a screenshot with my phone because, I need that record. And it stinks, but
it's your way of advocating for yourself right now, right?
Yes, right. So that again is, and I don't even think about it. It's like, oh, well, I just do it.
You do it, right.
Just to have it in case I have to, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of great drivers out there. And so I don't want to, cast a bad light on them. But these things do happen. And it's just something that may never have crossed your mind or other listeners' mind. And so it's just another day in my life.
Right. The things some of us just don't even think about.
Right.
Yeah. So. Are there other areas that come to mind where self-advocacy becomes important? You've mentioned transportation and workplace and school. What about out and about in the community?
Absolutely. So I think that, anytime you can make yourself aware or, let your community leaders know that you exist is a good thing. Mm-hmm. So I actually was attending a transportation forum a couple of years ago and ended up sitting next to someone who was a city council member for Worthington, where I live. And she and I just started talking about, I'm just casual conversation. And, now we're Facebook friends and we talk sometimes, but more importantly, through me, she is able to kind of get a different perspective, and she advocates for kind of disability and age-related issues on council. And so not necessarily because of me. I mean, she cares too, but, she knows me. And so I can sometimes point out like, oh, thank you for this age-friendly initiative or for, this pedestrian advisory board or things like that. So I think the more that we as people with disabilities can get out and can be active in our community, the better. And it's not, you don't need to be on council or, be in government or anything, but even just, going to a meeting or becoming engaged with a Twitter or Facebook discussion around your community can really help because, again, if decisions are being made and, you're not at the table or making sure that your opinion is heard and, a new curb ramp is constructed without a ramp or an accessible crossing, that's a problem. I mean, that's kind of not happening anymore, but that's the first thing I could think of. But, it's just important to make sure that when things are happening in your community, whether they're transportation related or development related or not, that, that you try or, connect with others who can help bring that other perspective to the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like sometimes just folks in the community, there's just a lack of awareness. Exactly. And so like just having, having a friend with a disability, engaging with someone that's different than you just really helps with awareness.
It does. And so that's why, for me, self-advocacy is important, but also education is important. And, I love being able to have, this podcast, for example, as a forum where, we can educate the community because not everyone listening may have a disability, but maybe they're working at other agencies around the state or, people that aren't aware. And so if we can help bring awareness and education to everyone, I mean, I love doing that. And so I always love talking about my experience and just, letting people know how getting them to think differently is really, I love to see that. I love to be a part of that when people are like, oh, I never considered that. And it's not, they just didn't know. It's not that they didn't mean, they weren't intentional. They just did not know. And so I love just being able to share that with people that yes, you can make your product or service better for everyone really. Again, some things are specific to people with disabilities, but ultimately not everything. And so, just let's focus on, okay, yes, let's maybe make this thing accessible or whatever. But again, that's going to make it better for everyone.
Right. What are your favorite assistive technologies?
Well, I love my iPhone. Spend too much time on Facebook on it or Twitter. But so, when the iPhone came out, probably, it's been about 10 years now. What Apple did with that product was really revolutionary at the time. And I remember when it first came out in about 2008, I saw one, a friend of mine had one, And I said, oh, it's a glass screen. It doesn't have any buttons, or, had a couple buttons, but like, I don't want that. That just seems too, I like tactile things with buttons. And so at the time, the iPhone, when it first came out, was only on the AT&T network, and I have Verizon. So I'm like, well, I can't even get the phone. So I don't want that phone anyway. But then in about 2011, I was able to get the phone on Verizon, and I got my first iPhone. And the ability to walk in a store like everyone else and walk out with a phone that I could use like everyone else, where I didn't have to buy special software or an extra expensive phone, was really empowering.
Wow.
Right? And so, I didn't have to, because before that I had to use a phone that had software. So I had to buy the phone and then like this couple $100 software package on top of that, just to use some functions of the phone. And so, again, when we're talking about accessibility and access and equal access, not so much, right, in that time. And so, when Apple came along and had, the accessibility features of the iPhone, that for many people was really revolutionary, including me. And just again, to go into the store and say, yeah, I want an iPhone. And here's how you turn on VoiceOver so it'll talk. And here's how I can use it. And that to me really has been I wouldn't call it a life changer, because it is technology. I think it has its place, but I think it is a true game changer. And so I think it's really opened doors to different jobs for people, and different, and really just more positive interaction. So a story about that. I was flying somewhere, and the flight attendant said, "Oh, ma'am, I see you're using an iPhone. My, father or someone has some low vision, so he could use an iPhone too." And so, just having that conversation about, yes, and here's how, and here's what the iPhone can do. And it's just a phone like everyone else has, but these features make it more usable for people who might need some different, some accessibility features, larger text, or make it talk, or, whatever that might be. And so that's something that, in the past decade or so has just really had a profound impact on my life. And also I know the lives of many other people with disabilities as well.
Yeah.
So, then there's the, what I would call like non-mainstream devices. So you have like I have a refreshable Braille display in my office, which, allows me to read the text of my computer screen in Braille, as well as hear it through my computer. So that's, provides some additional access for me to my computer. The Apple Mac line of computers has the built-in software for free that makes the computers, talk and are accessible. But with Windows machines, now, Microsoft has come out with its program called Narrator, which is it's a free built-in screen reader in the Windows side that, can control the computer. So technology really is advancing in some great positive ways. And I think it's really exciting to see where it will go. I heard on the radio this morning that 2035 is, coming up, but it's the reverse of when 2005 was. So, 15 years forward and back. And it's like, wow, just thinking back about where things were 15 years ago as to where they might be in the next 15 years. It's rather mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Who knows what it'll be like in 15 years. So
exciting.
It is.
If listeners hear anything,
yes.
it might, background noise might be Kenzo.
Yes. So Kenzo is my Black Labrador Retriever guide dog. He is a 6-year-old male Black Lab, and he and I have been working on a social media campaign in conjunction with the Voicecorps Radio Reading Services of Central Ohio. And so Voicecorps, they're a nonprofit organization, and they work with volunteers who read print material to people who are blind or visually impaired. So they read it to anyone with a print disability. So if you qualify for their service, you can you can listen in a variety of ways. So you can listen, through your computer, or if you go to their website on your iPhone, you can access the player there. They have a studio where the volunteers read, and then the transmissions go out over the air. You can also listen via Alexa. A couple months ago, I was approached about, could we feature Kenzo in a campaign? And so we've been doing that. And so he has a Twitter account, and they, we're doing some tweeting, and it's just really a great organization, and it's, a great cause. And it's, again, it's something that, yes, there are ways to get information like online or, through the phone. But if you don't have access to that service, or you just prefer to hear a human read something, Voicecorps is a really great way to make that happen. So they read from various publications here in the Columbus area, but also nationally as well. So National Geographic and New York Times, and just a lot of other things that they feature on the air.
So where can listeners find Kenzo?
So he has an account on Twitter and Facebook, and on both of those services, you can find that account by searching for Kenzo Voicecorps. So at Kenzo Voicecorps on Twitter, and those same search terms will find the account on Facebook. And it really is a great opportunity to help a great organization. So if you have a chance, check it out.
Check it out. Yes.
Again, we've talked a lot about what it takes to be an advocate, but, I just want to encourage people to not be afraid to speak up, because if you don't speak up and don't let people know what your needs or desires are to be successful, you'll never get what you want, or you'll be less likely to achieve that goal. So, if there's, again, if you need or want to practice, feel free to do that with people around you, just because it is really important to know how to communicate what you need and when, when to have that conversation, and when is appropriate. So keep advocating.
A transcript of today's episode is available at ood.ohio.gov/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review. We're on social media at Ohio OOD. Do you have a disability? Do you want a job? We can help. oodworks.com.